evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's discussion, an introduction to estate planning and wealth building for women. Tonight's program is sponsored by the Minneapolis St. Paul Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, where Miss Stephanie Barrage is the lovely president, and the Delta Phi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, where the lovely Marcia Henry is president. I want to say a special welcome to all members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and my beloved sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. If you're joining us from one of those organizations or any other Divine Nine organization, drop your colors in the chat. We want to see where y'all are representing from. It's an honor to be here with you. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Jasmine Brett Stringer, and I live in the Twin Cities. I am the founder and CEO of Carpe Diem with Jasmine, a professional development company and lifestyle brand. I'm also the lifestyle contributor to CBS Minnesota, also known as WCCO. TV. And at the end of the day, I am on a mission to help people live more authentic, connected, and mindful lives. I am also joined by some esteemed panelists. I'd love to introduce my sorority sister, the Honorable Maria Mitchell. Judge Mitchell is a judge in the Second Judicial District. She's presently assigned to preside over criminal cases. Previously, she served as an assistant Ramsey County attorney and director of Youth Justice and Wellness Division, where she was responsible for supervising attorneys with caseloads in juvenile court. Also, at the Office of Ramsey County Attorney, she was the prosecutor assigned to all treatment court cases in adult substance abuse court, veterans court, mental health court, and driving while under the influence court. She has also experience as a child protection prosecutor. Judge Mitchell served as Assistant Hennepin County Public Defender in the Adult Criminal Division and a law clerk to Judge Tanya M. Bransford. I love that cross-pollination of support in the organizations of Hennepin County District Court. Judge Mitchell is an active member of the Minnesota Association of Black Lawyers. Previously, she was a board member of Women's Advocates and a trustee for the Sheltering Arms Foundation. In addition to board service, she has volunteered for several different organizations in the community. Her current passion project is the Ramsey County Judges Women's Group, serving women who are involved with the criminal justice system. Judge Mitchell, if that's not enough, she's also teaching law and Black health, cradle to the grave with Professor Duchess Harris at the University of Minnesota Law School. This class explores the negative health consequences that laws have, either intended or unintended, on the Black body. And she has taught classes at all three law schools in the Twin Cities. That's pretty impressive. Judge Mitchell earned her BA from Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. Let's give it up for HBCUs. Her JD from the University of Minnesota Law School. Let's give it up for the Gophers. She's a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and Holy Trinity Episcopal Church. Let's show Judge Mitchell some love in the chat. Thank you. Our next esteemed panelist is attorney Anisha Murphy. Attorney Anisha Murphy, a Twin Cities native, is the founder of Just Law LLC, also known as Just Law. Just Law is a business and estate planning law firm with a mission to provide innovative, creative, and accessible legal resources, growth, and sustainability. In addition, Attorney Anisha Murphy serves as the Vice President of Program Design and Execution at CRF, where she spearheads the creation of collaborative programs aligned with community objectives. She plays a pivotal role in leading CRF's community relations initiatives and sustains connections with customers, partners, founders, and stakeholders. With over a decade of experience in the nonprofit sector, particularly within the small business ecosystem, attorney Anisha Murphy ensures that CRF's mission and vision support community goals through connected efforts with various external groups. Attorney Anisha Murphy holds a Juris Doctorate degree from Mitchell Hamlin Law School, a Master of Public Administration from Hamlin University. She's driven by a sense of duty and to impact the lives of others in all of their pursuits. Her ultimate goal is to continue to drive impact, closing disparity gaps, eliminating the racial wealth divide, and ultimately disrupting systemic and institutional barriers that result in unequal access to opportunity for Black and Brown communities. In her free times, attorney Anisha Murphy enjoys hanging out with family and friends. I know she loves to get on a plane and go somewhere too. Thank you so much. I think we're going to have a wonderful conversation tonight. Um, when we think about estate planning and wealth building for women, we can't help but acknowledge the elephant in the room about estate planning and the lack of access to or for the Black community. And I would dare to venture that this is, for some people, um, a taboo subject, a somewhat uncomfortable subject, but it is an important topic that needs to be addressed. I think about my beloved father who made his great transition in September of 2024, last September, and he was having health challenges 17 months prior. And my dad had a PhD. He was very educated, very intelligent, a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and the 33rd degree Mason, all of the things. And he always said he had his stuff in order. And I remember in September of 2023, when we found out that he had a brain tumor, and I'm like, okay, Dad, like you've been saying you had this paperwork. Where is it? Because they're going to cut your head open tomorrow. And Lord forbid something happened to you. I need the documents. And I was not able to find the documents. And so at the ninth hour, I will never forget this. Talk about trauma. I had to have an attorney friend in Atlanta come to the hospital. I had to have a psychologist come to the hospital to um, do issue this power of attorney so that I could have rights and a healthcare proxy so that I could advocate on my father's behalf in case something went wrong. And then we needed the psychologist there so they could prove that he wasn't signing it when he was under mental issues or under distress. So it was a whole bunch of rigmarole and a lot of stress. And literally, they were like, we got to take you down for this CT scan, and we're trying to sign the paperwork. So I do not want that to happen to anyone. So I tell everybody, please get your paperwork in order. Okay, Judge Mitchell, can you share some historical examples of how Black wealth was intentionally stripped from our communities? We've heard the stories of the Rondo neighborhood, um, Southwest Minneapolis, Tulsa, the GI Bill.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that when you say trauma, that is a major reason why we don't get all of our things together as we should. Um, Historically, in this country, um, a lot of what we thought was taken care of was taken away. And so when we're asked to rely on the law to transfer our assets or to make sure that the intended people get what they want, this country has shown us time and again that we can't always rely on the law to effectuate transfer of property and transfer of wealth. And so we have to begin to transition from that mindset. I mean, it could be that we can't that we can't count on the law at all times, but it at least we can have a plan, and we can have what we need and be enforced. For example, in Tulsa, as we all know, that's where we had what was called Black Wall Street, but really, it didn't operate in the same capitalistic way that Wall Street operates. It was more of a collaborative, and collective mindset about wealth, and those people worked very hard, and they, at some point, um, built up fortunes and built up community, and it was taken away. And one of the survivors is still 111 years old, fighting for the assets that her family and her community at one time accumulated. And as you mentioned, we don't have to go any further than Rondo to see that many of the people who were affected by that are still generationally affected by that today. And it takes away a lot of the trust around the legal system that is supposed to enforce our ability to keep our wealth. And I think that's something that we kind of have to grapple with. But I'm of the mind that you plan concurrently. You have the legal system documents, and you have an alternative plan for transferring wealth, because in the event that you can't rely on the legal system, there are other things that you can do. But we also have the historical aspect of terror and lynchings to achieve um, a taking of our wealth and blighting of our neighborhoods. So for us to talk about this, it's very difficult. And traditionally, we say don't talk about money. Don't tell anyone what you have.
Yeah, keep this household business in this house, right? Don't have it going out in the streets. Um, Attorney Anisha, can you talk a little bit about the mindset about money and wealth building today?
Yeah, sure. I want to kind of play on what Judge Mitchell said around this notion of distrust, and I think it goes deeper than just the legal system, because Black communities specifically have been systematically excluded from economic opportunities. It has created a distrust in systems in general. So that system could be the financial system all the way down to the to government structures that have been in
Healthcare.
healthcare, right?
The
And
tus
so,
the
uh,
Tuskegee experiment, you know?
Yeah.
exactly, or even what's going on right now with women's rights and mortality rates around Black and Brown women right now, right? So, just a distrust of systems because of how we've been locked out. So that's one thing. Historically, we were the assets. When we got over here, we were chattel property. And because we were the asset, we weren't able to start building wealth at the same speed as our white counterparts, transparently speaking. So there's 400 years of a gap in in our ability to build wealth. And to Judge Mitchell's point, when we created communities and created systems that we know that were known to transfer or build wealth, that were stripped away from us, right? My family comes from the Rondo community. So Rondo, by way of South Minneapolis, two very historically Black communities where wealth was either pulled from individuals or not valued at the same breath as our white counterparts. And then let's talk about the psychological effects on this. Because of all of these issues that have come and followed our community as it relates to wealth building or the lack thereof, we create a scarcity mindset where individuals really focus on immediate survival rather than long-term wealth building. I mean, we're not talking about it because we're literally thinking about how to get through day to day versus what's the long-term impact and how can I start planning for the future. And then last but not least, just economic insecurities and health outcomes like we just talked about, right? the legacy of trauma also contributes to economic insecurity that has negatively impacted our mental and physical health, really furthering the compounding financial struggles and the health challenges that we see today.
And it takes a toll on family dynamics. So I mentioned this stressor with my dad. And, my mom had done some estate planning, but I really was of the mindset that my mom needed to have a trust. And so going through this journey with my dad, my parents were divorced. I was like, Mom, if you do not get everything together, so I'm not scrambling and doing all of these things and get this stuff in the it was a very taxing time. And my mom is my girl. I love her. But I was like, if you don't, I might have said some not so nice words. Get this together because this is stressful and it should not be this way.
Well,
Before we go to our next segment, I forgot some very important housekeeping rules. One, I wanted to ask everybody to make sure you stay on mute. We are going to have some time for questions at the end. We have some great co-chairs, co-leaders today that are helping us behind the scenes. And so feel free to drop your questions in the chat as they bubble up. You don't have to wait until the end because we know they might, dissipate and you're like, oh, I wanted to ask something. So feel free to put it in the chat. They're going to capture it for us and group them together. And more importantly, this is meant to be an interactive session. We've asked you to stay on mute, but we're going to be throwing in some questions and comments in the chat that we want to engage with. If you are paying attention to the chat, you'll see that Michelle just dropped in. Why have conversations about money often been taboo in Black households? We love to hear your thoughts on why they've been taboo in Black households and how does that hold us back? And I'm going to add one more thing. What are you doing to break the cycle? What are you doing to break the cycle? So let's venture on down to this wealth mindset, not mindset, mindset. Um, Anisha, how can we identify our financial priorities and build a personal wealth mission statement?
I think it plays into, and that's a great question. For me, it plays into sort of the last part of which you just ended with, Jasmine, and it's just having starting with the conversation. I think so often we go to thinking about creating or designing these financial priorities from from a scarcity mindset or from a hush hush don't tell mindset, but our white counterparts are having these conversations all of the time. They're sitting around dinner tables talking about, this is how much money is in this bank account. Here's how much money is in this trust. If anything ever happened to me, right? Here's how to access this safe, etc. So I think, to me, it's really about having the conversation. The more you can have that conversation, the more you will feel comfortable and really building up that personal mission statement. And I also think too, I think we have to dismantle, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, but dismantle the notion that you can't start talking about finances, or that you can't start talking about personal wealth or wealth in general unless you have an estate of X thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars. Like, as long as you have a bank account, you can start estate planning, right? And start talking about wealth and the transfer of that wealth.
And insurance, not to cut you off. I mean, no,
Insurance.
no judgment here, but I would hope that I would not have to contribute to a GoFundMe to bury
Exactly.
any of my friends on this call tonight.
Exactly. So
And
I think the more
we've
we,
all contributed to a GoFundMe to bury someone, that we might know. So, it pops up and you're like, how can this person who's is so valuable to us in our community not be able to afford to bury themselves?
mm-hmm, yeah.
Thank you. Judge Mitchell, what honest conversations do you think families should have about health, work, retirement, and end of life decisions? I tell you, I have bought your book. Let's see this, not your book, but I'm dead. Now, what? For everybody. And I'm like, fill this out. And if you know what, I think I'm going to give away one of these books to somebody on the call. So we're going to do a little raffle. Look at me, I'm going off script because I think this book is so good. So I'm going to ask my little co-leaders to help us facilitate a drawing for one of these at the end, because this is such a great resource. So Judge Mitchell.
I think that book came to me when, my parents have done a couple of different things to try to plan for wealth. We met, and one of the reasons that I think that they started thinking about it was because they both took care of their parents when their parents died. And I think one of the first things is that um, normally we don't necessarily inherit. A lot of times we pay in when somebody dies, but there's my aunt Dot, who was a relative who did not have any, Dorothea Mason, didn't have any children. She didn't want my mother to be struggling about how to bury her, and she planned everything out. And this is just my attempt to try to emulate them. But with respect to having conversations about um, with families, it's hard to talk about your impending death, right? Um, and at a time, even early on, especially when you have kids, to think about the fact that you may not end the journey at the time that you want to end the journey. And I think that's a huge um, problem for us to talk about. But we have to have those conversations because you want your loved ones not to be stressed out like you were talking about. Do you want do you is it a healthcare directive that says do not resuscitate? Or is
Mhm.
it no extraordinary means? I mean, what does the person really want and what is their quality of life?
And
You have
I
to
would
have
actually
those
say
discussions.
get granular on um, extraordinary means, because is it life support? Is it a feeding tube? Um, do you want to be on a ventilator? I mean, really break it down, because some people might be like, I don't want to be on life support, but yeah, if I need to be on a ventilator for a week, I'm willing to try it to see if I rest and I'm going to bounce back. Oh no, I don't want to be on a feeding tube. Or maybe, yeah, I want to be on a feeding tube, but if it goes beyond something where you're having to feed me in my veins directly, I don't want that. I mean, so I would encourage people to get very specific.
I think it's an act of love to get specific because and it's also you may have to come to terms with your own mortality, but what is the thing that's guaranteed? The first day that you're born begins the process of dying, right? Because there's only one path. It's to grow old, hopefully, but to continue to evolve. And at some point, you know that the end is coming. And so you just have to become comfortable with that. And maybe lean on your faith in understanding what the circle of life is about. But the conversations with your family, um, even if they don't get to the point where they're doing the directive, which you would hope that they do, um, that they tell you exactly what they want because I mean, I've now been in the position where I've had to pull the plug. And I think that if 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 my partner had not told me what quality of life meant to him and what he was expecting, he didn't have a healthcare directive, but we did have a power of attorney. So the hospital worked with us. But if he had not told me that, it would have been devastating to try to figure out, at what point do I stop all measures, right? But you can feel comfortable in the fact that that you're fulfilling their wishes.
Right. And that
Something to
is
that
very
though,
freeing. I love that, the act of love. Yes, please do.
because I feel like we often think about estate planning or how to plan as it relates to death. And that's one way to plan or one reason to plan. But an estate plan comes in at its simplest core when you no longer can communicate your wishes about your life. So we all can get into the car right now and get into an accident and no longer be able to communicate our wishes, but not be in critical condition or nearing death. That's where your estate plan kicks in. So I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding around estate planning and how it works. It comes in at its simplest core when you no longer are able to communicate your wishes to a third party in regards to your finances, your health care, your minor children, etc. And so I think that's also a way for us to shift the mindset to the earlier question and just having honest conversations around what is estate planning, and then what do we need to start planning for, to do things that we just talked about, like transfer of our wealth, our property, etc.
I think that's a wonderful point, Anisha, is that, um, you know, some people say, well, I don't want anyone to have joint power over my things. And it's like, at some point, we live on this earth with other people, and we have to depend on other people, one. And two, if you have worked your whole life to accumulate some sort of stability, you don't want it to just go back to the government, one.
Yeah.
And two, you can revoke anything, like you can undo it. So if you thought this person was the person who could deliver, and then they predecease you, or they can't deliver anymore for whatever reason.
I think we're back now.
Oh,
All
I think
righty,
yeah.
gotta love the technology. You know what? You know you are not on Zoom if you don't say you're on mute when somebody's talking. So Judge Mitchell, can you please repeat what you just said? Because we know it was juicy and good, and we got our pens and our paper, and we want to make sure we capture those notes.
But I'm not sure where I left off and got muted, so I don't want to repeat myself. But I guess my point is that if you've worked hard your whole life, and you want to transfer the wealth to my nephews, to your best friend. I mean, that's an act of love too among women, and you know, knowing how difficult it is for Black women to accumulate wealth. You want to make sure it goes where it needs to go. But the other point is, none of this has to be permanent. If you
Mhm.
at some point decide that somebody is no longer reliable, or they predecease you, you can revoke a durable power of attorney. You can change your will. It doesn't have to be permanent. And so I think that's the other thing people get caught up. Once I make the decision, it's made. No, it doesn't have to be. Somebody might have a baby, or you might get remarried, and things can change. And that's okay.
Yeah, it's always best practice to review your estate plan at least once a year to just make sure everything that's in there is accurate. And disclaimer, because we didn't give a disclaimer, this is not legal advice. It's good advice, but it's not legal advice. We are not your attorney representatives, although we would be happy to hire you on as clients.
Well, Miss Murphy would. I believe Jasmine is still muted by the host, maybe. Um, but I think, as a judge, I can't give legal advice, but I can point you in the right direction in terms of like, hey, maybe you should go to the bar association, or, I have a friend who you can talk about that with. I can't do it, but those are the things. I can't give referrals, but it's okay. Like, I need to talk about this with community just as much as you do.
Mhm.
Right. This is the opportunity and the time to tap into our community and to have these conversations. I am married to someone that does not look like me in skin tone, and I will tell you the conversations that we started having about estate planning. I mean, it's just like so matter of fact, these quarterly meetings that we used to have, and everybody knows what they're getting, that, very specific. And if things change, and I'm like, wow, this is just regular dinner conversation. There's no emotion here. There's no, I don't want to come. There's no need for Kleenex. We're just having a conversation about things so everybody is on the same page whenever the time comes.
I,
Um,
I think one
Really
thing
been empowering and freeing.
I think one thing Anisha said that you brought to mind, Jasmine, is our attorney Anisha, is that um, when you have these conversations, too often I think we have an emotional attachment to the asset. And that's one of the things that you talked about when we were prepping for this session. It's grandma's house, or it's because we work so, I mean, the home ownership rate for African Americans in this country is um is so disproportionate, we're so disproportionately behind that we get very attached to these assets. And I'd love for you to talk a little more about that too.
Yeah, I mean, we do get attached to assets. I mean, I was, in a very confident that I was going to sell an asset. Then the world started to change, and I'm like, well, who knows? Maybe Black people, we're not going to be able to buy houses. And I'm like, well, Jasmine, like, why are you becoming attached to this asset now? And if you want to retain the asset, maybe you sell this asset and you buy an asset so it's a little closer. But I think we do sometimes allow, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but we allow fear to come in, and that fear messes with our mindset, our wealth mindset. And I have my wealth mindset, and it's like, well, why would you pay someone, when you could do things differently? You could accomplish the same thing, but you could do it differently. And doing it differently would save you some energy, and some financial resources also. So we're gonna go to our next segment, and we're gonna be talking about some financial tools and strategies. And there are a lot of great questions and comments coming in. Linda Garrett, who I love and adore, said it is never too late to have a power of attorney at 54. And y'all know 54 is like 34 these days. My husband had a stroke and was in coma. I did not have a power of attorney, so I could not access the funds to pay the mortgage.
I think that is a very important comment because as women, and I know as Black women, we've been told by our mothers a lot of times to have our own account at all times,
Don't
right?
let the left hand know what the right hand's doing. Did your mom tell you that? That's what my mom and my grandmother told me. Don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing.
I mean, one of the things for sure is that you need to have your own financial independence. But on the other hand, too, making sure that you understand all of the financial decisions that your family is making when you're in a relationship is another important piece. And what she's talking about too is also I mean, this happens to men too. I mean, they delegate the financial portion to the person who's interested in that, but it never ends well for you, right? Because something happens and um, you don't have your name on the bank account for the transfer of funds. You didn't think about the fact that you have to have access to the person's insurance information so that you can help them make decisions around care. I think that um, I agree. My partner died at age 49. And so those kinds of things um, are never too early to think about.
Yeah,
Well, and
never.
I think for me, an asset, if you don't know how to leverage or use an asset properly and you're not taking care of it, it actually can depreciate in value. And so when you have real estate, leveraging that real estate um to either buy more real estate or right so that you're not losing the equity that you gain in that property is so important. And I mean the same is true of any asset that you can acquire, right? I was always told that your money should be making money for you, right? We call that mailbox money. When you're asleep, your money is making money for you. And so how are you leveraging assets? It's okay, to have grandma's house, but are you using it? Especially if it's not being used, can you fix it up and turn it into Airbnb? Turn that money in that you all are getting from the family into a trust. Talk like right, that's the Rockefeller approach. You get what I'm saying? Like so, like how do we get down to grassroots and really start to leverage our assets to work for us versus just acquiring these assets and not understanding or knowing what they can actually do to really build legacy, to really build the next generation, etc.
And can I just add something? Because I know that, we all love a designer person things and they cost a lot of money, but those are assets too. And
They
they
are.
actually appreciate.
They
They
are.
actually, some of these Louis Vuittons and Gucci's and Dior's, they are assets that appreciate in value. So it's not
Same
just
with the
book.
same with the jewelry.
Yeah.
So if you buy a Louis Vuitton bracelet, that's gonna go up in Hermes bracelets, those go up in value each year. And you can list those things into your estate plan. So people think, oh, I can only list a house or life insurance, etc. An asset is anything of type of value and that holds value. So you can put those things into your estate plan, pass them on from generation to generation. You sell it, right? It can make you money, etc.
And I
Attorney
think one thing that
Anisha,
we, I mean, I've seen that people do that with different purses and also with artwork. That's another thing that appreciates. Uh, but I also want to think about when you said those brand names, it also came to mind that like how we spend our money in our community, which maybe it won't appreciate in the same way, but maybe you won't spend as much money, but it's thinking about how, putting our values where our money putting our money where our values are, right? And it's okay to have I'm not disparaging or saying that you shouldn't have a Louis Vuitton purse or you shouldn't have a Hermes scarf because I think they're beautiful. But the other piece of it is as we become more and more the target of rolling back financial progress, for Black people, I think we have to think about how do we build institutions of wealth and how do we build and where are we spending our money to build the community?
and
Yeah,
maybe
make it work.
judgmental would say that, you know what, I'm buying Louis Vuitton because I own some LVHM stock. Thank you very much. So I am a proud shareholder of this company. And
Hmm.
I think we have to make decisions. I remember when Carla Vernon, a lot of people know Carla Vernon in the Twin Cities, when she became CEO of the Honest Corp, and I have a lot of respect and admiration. She's your sister in the corner office for Carla. I was like, you know what, let me see what this stock price is doing. Because I could post a wonderful congratulations, Carla, on LinkedIn, or I could do my talking with my left hand money and I could support my sister by becoming a shareholder of her organization. And then when things come up to vote, I might not have 10,000 shares, but I got a couple hundred. I'm still getting that proxy and I'm able to cast a vote every single year.
Yeah. I like to say the worst thing that could have happened to our community, and I'm speaking directly to the Black community, was integration because it stops forcing us to do money or to do business with each other, to do commerce with each other. And so, to the points that you all are raising, if we want to see a Black Wall Street 2.0, then we have to start circling the dollars back into our community. The dollar leaves the African American community every 6 minutes. It's
That's a
probably
good statistic.
it probably has gone down even faster than that. And so, as long as we keep putting our money into other communities, we'll never, ever, ever see it triple, double, or get to what we're talking about. So, we're talking about independent wealth, but in order to be independent or to thrive as a individual, you need that communal aspect too. So it's not just about the independent wealth, but it's also about the communal aspect and us building the wealth in our community for our kids, so they can have a community that they want to see, a legacy that they want to leave behind and invest in as well.
I don't want to be the only person who can afford to live in my neighborhood, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's lonely. You want to have friends that look like you. Before we move on, Attorney Anisha, can you talk about how Black women should think about revenue streams, including like real estate, side hustles, and the stock market? And then, Judge Maria, maybe you could follow up with some workplace financial resources. I think about like, 401k, life insurance that we may be underutilizing.
Yeah, anybody who knows me knows I am a strong advocate in diversifying your income stream. So I do not believe in putting all of your eggs in one basket. And I think that, as Black women, we have so much talent and so much strength. And a lot of times we give our all into these 9 to 5s that we don't pour anything back into ourselves. And so I think the more you can diversify your income streams, you should. whether it be through real estate, whether it be through insurance policies, whether it be through brokerage accounts, whether it be through a side hustle, whatever that may be. I was reading something on Instagram the other day that said the average millionaire, or I think it's a billionaire, has 7 streams of income. And so I'm not saying you have to get to million or billionaire status, but I do encourage individuals to diversify their income streams, because if that one stream ever gets cut off and you're contingent upon that, how are you actually thinking about legacy building, wealth building, etc.?
I
Yeah.
think that's so important because I think a lot of us also give away a lot of our talent.
We
Uh,
do.
and I mean, I'm guilty of it too. Like, oh, you want me to make you something? Okay, I'll make it. Can I give you anything? No, it's okay. You know, like I think we're such giving people that as women that we oftentimes don't value our own worth, you know? Like it's super important to do that, and it is so important to understand that the value that you hold in a lot of places that you contribute.
Y'all, this conversation is going so well, and I know we're going to do a survey and we're going to do a series. We're going to have follow-up questions. I'm going to take a little liberty and adjust our format a little because we've had some great questions come in through the chat. So I'm going to toss final questions to you before we go to audience questions. So we're going to go to audience questions a little earlier. But either one, Judge Mitchell, Attorney Anisha, what are some of the first steps someone should take if they're ready to start their estate plan? And again, this is non-binding legal advice. This is just conversation amongst friends, and we encourage you to consult a professional like Attorney Anisha Murphy when you make sure you give her $1 or more, whatever her retainer fee is. Or maybe
But,
she does
but
free
A little
consult.
more than $1, but
I know more than $1, right?
But one thing I want to point out before we move to that piece is you did ask me about employee about different things that you can do through your employment. And I think when we were talking about this, one of the things that I said is, well, I was just so happy to have a job. And at one point I was sitting in the lunchroom and I'd been there for a while. And one of the younger white attorneys comes in and says, oh, I already have $6,000 in my deferred comp. And we have a match. We had a match for our deferred comp. And I'm like, what? What's, you know, I didn't even know because I just got, you know, like, here's your case file. And I didn't even think to say, what are my benefits that you're giving me when I get here? And then after that, every Black attorney or attorney of color that came in the office, I said, I don't care if you give $25 to deferred comp out of every paycheck. You need to do it because before you know it, you're just leaving money on the table. And they were thankful because they too had not paid attention to that deferred comp availability. And the other simple
Compound interest, all of the things add up. I mean, I remember when I was working in the corporate sector, and one of my mentors said, Jasmine, I know you're about to leave, but you need to negotiate a package. Even though you already have
yeah,
a job, you work for this big old company and you are a woman of color. So you need to get paid leaving, even though you're leaving on your own and you already have a job lined up. Don't leave any money on the table. And I was like, what? I could do that? I mean, I'm so happy. I got this job and I've got a signing bonus and it's going to be great. And they're like, nope, but you need to let them know that it is not working out and they need to pay you. And I was
yeah.
like, oh,
And
thank you.
I'll just add one more thing to transition to Anisha is that one very simple thing that you can do for estate planning is to make sure that everything that you hold through your employer, you fill out the beneficiary portion so that if you're allowed to transfer that upon death, that's one thing that can automatically go to the people that you love and want to have as part of your legacy.
And I'll go a little bit deeper than that, because people oftentimes will leave minor children or put minor children as their beneficiaries to their life insurance policies, etc. And I think that is great, but a better alternative is to list your trust and then list out what happens in your trust as it relates to your estate plan. I also want to touch on something that I seen in the chat a little earlier. A will is great, but a will is nothing more than a document of consideration. And if you pass with just the will alone, you are automatically going into probate. And for some people, they want to go into probate. And for others, they don't, because for those that understand and know the probate process is very time consuming and is very expensive. So, my suggestion is always have a will, but put that will into a full fledged estate plan. And in the will, it lists out different things that how you want your assets, what you can even address and say who you want to have as guardian over your minor children, etc. So I would just suggest that having a full-fledged estate plan, which is inclusive of a will, but it's not just a will alone, is the key to go. And people are probably like, well, what does that mean? So a trust, a will, power of attorney, healthcare derivative are the best sort of
Or
routes.
directive. Some people might know healthcare
Or
directive.
healthcare derivative directory, they're the same thing. So that in the event that anything happens to you, when you pass with the trust and you have all these documents inside of your trust, it passes free and clear of court involvement, which then means that the assets can go to the intended beneficiaries faster, etc., etc.
Well, one thing that this
Also,
Oh, I was just going to say, we also hopefully plan to do a follow-up on this where we get more into the weeds on some of this stuff, because I think the quick explanation is not going to really, I mean, it wets your whistle. It says, you know what, there's stuff out there that I really need to investigate. And maybe I need to call Anisha after this and kind of dive in deeper. But we also intentionally plan to have some additional programs where we can get more into the weeds.
thank you, Judge Mitchell. So we're going to take our first audience question. How can you start to have these difficult conversations with our families and our communities around building wealth and, more importantly, end of life planning? Any guidance? I think sometimes you just got to cry and scream, because I know that's what I had to do. I was like, I can't even talk to you, Mom, until you tell me you're getting it together. I had to be very dramatic. Until I see trust papers, don't call me, boo. I love you.
You should
Well,
take. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, Jasmine, I think some of your psychology background could be helpful to us in fleshing these things out as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is that when we begin to think about end of life, that it is just not end of life. It is contingency planning. I put the quote in the chat that once you get comfortable with the idea that you are going to die, or the fact that you are going to die, you can get about the business of living. So we are all going to die. That is a truth. It is a truth. And so we know that. So we should embrace that. And we should say, I know I'm going to die, but how am I going to make sure that the people that I love are taken care of? How am I going to make sure that they know my wishes, so that I'm not sitting up here rocking on a feeding tube if that's not what I want to do? But if I just want to be alive and staring off in the wall, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But we have to communicate our wishes, because nobody can read our mind, and we do not know what could happen. Life changes in the blink of an eye, the blink of an eye. And so you think you have all this time to get it together. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it next quarter. I'm going to do it over the summer. But what if you were in a car accident?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we found my father's brain tumor, that was the least on my mind. I was trying to get my dad to go to rehab. I mean, like, what? Like, where did this come from? I mean, and it totally shifted the conversation and the energy, and it just shifted everything that we did. And that was nowhere in the plan. Not one iota did I think that would happen. So I think you have to say that this is an act of love. And because I love you, and more importantly, if you say you love me, because I know that's what I did for my mom, if you say you love me and you see what I'm going through on this situation, why don't you make it better on this side?
Mm-hmm. I would just add to that, it's an act of life. It's our playbook for life, because I think so often, and my soror Sharella Moore dropped in the chat, it's leaving a legacy, and that legacy can be built while you're still living. It doesn't have to be the end of life or how you plan for the end of life, but how are you making sure that your assets, as you are actively building them, are protected? And I think that's so important. We get caught up in oh, this is just for end times, but it's actually how are we living today? What's going on today? And as we're acquiring these different assets, acquiring wealth that will matter both today and later, right? At the end time. So I'll just add that to the points that you raised, Jasmine.
Thank you. So a follow-up question, this is a little lengthy question. Can you do a will and estate planning concurrently? And along that line, can you tell us what the difference between a revocable and irrevocable trust are?
Yeah, so a will should be a part of your estate plan. Like I said earlier, a
So you
will
do them concurrently. You do it as a part of the estate planning
you
process.
should do it as a part of the estate planning process. Now, there are some people that will opt to do a will outside of an estate plan, and I love all the information that's out there, but I think it's a bit misleading because what's not being told is that a will automatically gets you into probate because, as I said, a will is nothing more than a document of consideration. You want these things to happen. I wish for these assets to be transferred to this person. And when you pass, it goes up in front of a judge who doesn't know you and says, oh, Anisha's wish was X, Y, and Z. Is this asset still active and valid? Is the person who Anisha wished to give this to still alive and well? Right? Like you're just giving a mere
It's a
stranger
process. I'm there, y'all. It's a
well,
process.
you're giving a, and not only is it a process, you're allowing a mere stranger to determine what happens to your assets, and they don't know you, right? And so that's why I always suggest that a will alone, while it's okay, depending on what type of assets you have, once you get into having real estate and all of those different things, I will always suggest a trust.
And
Um,
what is a trust? Because I know we've been using it and we're making a lot of assumptions here.
yeah.
I don't want to be using the word oligarchy when people don't know what an oligarchy is. So what is a trust?
Yeah, so a trust is a fiduciary relationship where one party, the individual that makes the trust,
And
or
financial, when you say fiduciary, you mean financial?
financial relationship, yep, holds the legal title to the property and is obligated to manage it for the beneficiary benefit of another person, which is the beneficiary. In layman terms, for those of us who are entrepreneurs, a trust is a corporate shield over your personal assets. And it essentially, you can be the person that creates the trust and then also the beneficiary of the assets of the trust. And so don't get so caught up in thinking it has to be for somebody else. It can really instruct. You can say, I only want to give myself a $2,500 stipend each month out of my trust, and it's coming from this account, etc. You can set up a trust like that that you are controlling. And
You
so
catered. Oh,
it's
I
a
was gonna
it's a
say. Oh,
oh, go
go ahead.
ahead. I was just gonna say, in short, it's a corporate shield, just like an LLC would be,
An
or a
umbrella.
corporation would be over your assets.
I was going to
Can
say
I?
that's one of the things that Jasmine brought up during our discussion is that we don't use all of the legal tools that are afforded to us. For example, the LLC, what you're talking about. Like a lot of families put their family properties into an LLC, and that's how they
And
that's how
every
they
property should
operate.
be in an individual LLC, but I'm not giving you any legal advice. Yeah, I'm not giving legal advice, but it could depend on how you want to set it up.
And also what depends too is what type of um it's not an asset, what type of instrument you're using to get finance. If you are using an FHA does not allow you to put that asset into an LLC because FHA is designed for home ownership. So again, this is where the attorneys are coming in to make sure that you don't get yourself into mortgage fraud, etc., by putting
Tax problems.
tax problems, etc., putting certain assets um into certain legal things because this is what everyone is telling you to do on social media, right?
That's why
Um,
you have to talk to an expert
you got to talk to the expert because they'll
that
make
knows you and knows the laws in your state. Because
exactly
I'm dealing in Georgia, which is completely different than Minnesota.
Minnesota.
I know there's a question here about the look back period. which I want to get to. And the look back period, I will say, differs from state to state. And so there was a question that says, when should you transfer assets prior to death, especially when long-term care is needed? And we know that unless you have long-term care insurance, unless you're independently wealthy, again, I've just been telling y'all all my business. My dad needed 24-hour care that I had to pay for. I was responsible for an extra $10,000 a month, um, which
Mm.
was not in my budget because I had to pay somebody $1,500 every week, which was a deal, not to mention household bills and groceries and transportation and flying back and forth to Atlanta just on the basis. And so there are
Yeah.
things that we can do so that we can take advantage of things that people have paid for in the system.
Yeah, so estate planning is state specific. So to Jasmine's point, what laws apply in Georgia is totally different than the laws that apply to Minnesota. And then I wanted to touch on, and thanks for bringing this back to the chat, Narita, revocable versus irrevocable trust. So a revocable trust allows you to modify the trust during the individual who designed the trust is life. Once that person dies, the trust automatically becomes irrevocable. Irrevocable means that once the trust is complete and signed and notarized, it cannot be changed. And they're both good assets to use. And when you should use one versus the other, that's when I would advise you to talk to an attorney because they can tell you and give you a full scope based off of your plan. And not just an attorney. This is where you bring in all of your advisors because it really should be all your advisors working together for a plan for
Banker.
you. Banker, your financial advisor, if you have an independent CPA, your tax professional, etc.
Oh
And then
my
as
goodness.
far as the look back period, I can answer that. That's in relations to a qualifying for Medicaid. So most states actually have a 5-year look back period, which essentially if you want to get on Medicaid, you cannot have any income. If you have income, the state will make you contribute to your care. And what the state will do, because and this is federal funding, right? There's Medicaid, and then there's Medicare. We're talking about Medicaid,
Income and assets because they will take your assets.
right? So
Well, you
during
guys are so excited for this next thing because we're looking at 2 minutes left.
Wait, let
So
me answer this though. During the 5-year period, the Medicaid, the office will look back and determine if you have transferred or given away or sold any of your assets for less than fair market value to become eligible for long-term care. If they find within that 5-year period that you have transferred any assets, you can get penalized and ultimately they can require you to pay for the care because they'll determine that you have enough income to pay something for your care. So just understanding and knowing where you are, like if again, Jasmine was dealing with this in Georgia, it's totally different process in Minnesota. The look back period is totally different in Minnesota. I always suggest that when you get an asset, and again, this is just a suggestion, it's not advice, to put it into your trust, to put it into a trust and list it in the trust so that it's just taken care of so that if anything ever happens to you 10 years down the line, you are outside of that look back period.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Judge Mitchell, attorney Anisha Murphy. I want to thank our phenomenal co-host, the audience, the women that were in attendance for these questions. Please note that there is a call to action question in the chat. What's one action you will take this week, not next week, but this week? And I don't know if the weekend's on Friday for you, Saturday or Sunday, but what are you going to take this week to start or continue building generational wealth for you and your family and you and your loved ones? Again, Judge Mitchell mentioned that this was only the first conversation, that we are going to do it again. We are going to be sending out a survey, and so we want your feedback. If you have some questions, feel free to put them in the survey because, again, this is only the beginning because this is critical a critical conversation that our community, and more importantly, that Black women need to have. And we see that there are a lot of questions around this because we want to get it right, because we know that this is an act of love. And if that's one thing we do well, is we love well. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for moderating.
Yeah.
Great job. Thank you. This is great.
I think our music's going to come back on so we can like rock out.
No music. We're going to fade out. Dimmers is going to stop the recording.